Yikes! The Buffalo Bills were very sloppy in Saturday's 27-15 preseason loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm breaking down my biggest takeaways from the game today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Well, folks, that was a slop fest. Buffalo Bills fell in week 2 of the preseason, 27-15 to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and there's a lot of issues from this football game. A lot of issues. We're going to talk about them here on the podcast. I'm going to give you my key takeaways from watching this football game. Now, before I get too deep into it, we have to have the proper lens on this discussion. It's preseason. Now, there's plenty of things that are concerning that could be regular season issues. But if your demeanor coming out of this game is that the Bills aren't contenders and they have fatal flaws that are going to prevent them from even coming close to their goals this year, I remind you that this is the preseason. So let's make sure we have the proper perspective when considering this very sloppy football game that was played by the Buffalo Bills. But like I mentioned, a lot of issues. Penalties were awful. 13 penalties for 93 yards. If I'm not mistaken, 12 of them were in the first half. Plenty of them coming with the Bills starters on offense and defense. And listening to Sean McDermott after the game, it's pretty disappointing because it sounds like they were very deliberate this week to work on penalties. And he said if guys committed penalties in practice, they pulled them out. And the response is 13 penalties for 93 yards. And McDermott said after the game that they had to go back to the drawing board on penalties. Well, that's 2 weeks in a row where penalties, lack of discipline, lack of good fundamentals showed up. Penalties were a major issue. Turnovers were a major issue. Matt Barkley, 4 turnovers. We'll talk about that, but penalties, turnovers, pass protection was a major struggle in this football game, particularly from the Bills' starting offensive tackles. Thought the Bills' pass rush was very disappointing. Really didn't do a good enough job of affecting any of Pittsburgh's quarterbacks. I think you also had some injuries this game. Shane Ray couldn't finish the game with a hamstring. DJ Dale left the game with a back injury. Matt Barkley had a right elbow injury. And then, of course, the Bills take another hit to the offensive tackle depth with Tommy Doyle, who it doesn't look good, right? On the cart, air cast. Does not look good for Tommy Doyle. We'll talk about that more in just a moment. But as we just get into this conversation, a lot of issues from this football game. All right, now let's kind of take that position-by-position look at some of my key takeaways from what I observed. And let's start with quarterback. And Josh Allen played a little into the second quarter of this game. He was 7 of 10 for 64 yards. I thought he made some really nice throws. Really nice throws. And that second drive was really set back due to, was it 4 or 5 penalties on the drive? I think like maybe 4 plays in a row there was penalties. And Josh was dealing. He was making some nice throws down the field. A couple nice ones to Gabe Davis, hit Diggs, hit Kincad. There was some good stuff going on, but I mean, what was it, like 3rd and 34? at one point. So it made some nice throws. He dealt with plenty of pressure, dealt with penalties. Now, I will say on the pressure, I thought there were some chances that he had to get the ball out of his hands quicker. But overall, I mean, the first team offense, even with Josh Allen running it, there was a lot of sloppy. Now, he made some good throws, but there was a lot of sloppy. I think my prevailing thought from Josh Allen, though, is how encouraged I am with the throws down the field. Let's move on to Matt Barkley. Matt Barkley, a huge loser from this game. Thought he had a real shot to be QB2. Played great last week in the preseason. Outplayed Kaiir Elam during training camp. Earned an opportunity to run the second team offense. And he goes out there and turns the ball over 4 times. 3 interceptions and a lost fumble. He had a couple of good throws, but those first 2 interceptions were egregious, just literally throwing it to the other team. Bad throws, bad decisions. Matt Barkley has a prime opportunity to be on the roster. He hadn't been on an active roster since 2020. He had a chance to do it this year. And he went out there and just turned the ball over. Didn't look good. Now he's got a right elbow injury. Who knows how severe that is. Then Kaiir Elam comes in and plays better, right? 12 of 15, 112 yards, touchdown. Again, he's doing it against the third stringers. But I thought Matt Barkley might have been pulling away in this QB2 race, and it looks like it's potentially Kaiir Elam back in the driver's seat, especially if he goes out and plays well next week against Chicago Bears. So an interesting day for the Bills quarterbacks. Josh Allen, I think it is what it is, did some good things. Matt Barkley was terrible, and Kaiir Elam may have reemerged as QB2. Moving on to tight end. How about Dalton Kincad? This is probably my biggest positive from this entire football game was Dalton Kincad and the 3 catches that he had for 45 yards. And this the way that he got the catches, winning routes, right? Separating. Creating leverage, being quarterback friendly, catching the football, turning and running, just all the smooth, nuanced ability that exists with Dalton Kincad. I think you saw in those 3 catches for 45 yards, restoring that middle of the field target for this offense, restoring that route running from the slot. You saw it. The guy can play. There's a lot of hype for Dalton Kincad, and it's all warranted in my opinion. And my biggest positive takeaway from this game was those flashes from Dalton Kincad to be that missing element to this Buffalo Bills passing game. Now, the rest of the tight ends, Dawson Knox didn't play, had a finger injury. Quentin Morris had 1 catch for 3 yards, but the false start stands out more to me than the 1 catch. And then Jay Sternberger did have that 27-yard completion. But I think the big takeaway here from tight ends was what we saw from Dalton Kincad, and he just continues to turn heads and give me some confidence that he's going to be a factor immediately for the Buffalo Bills. And you can kind of tell that there's maybe a level of comfort that the Bills have with Dalton Kincad in that they're showcasing him some in the preseason, but maybe not fully unleashing him and knowing that he's ready to go and really be a meaningful weapon for Josh Allen and this Bills offense. All right, we're going to talk about the rest of the team here. Obviously, wide receiver next. We'll get into running backs and offensive line. But next, I do need to tell you about LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. And folks, it is so easy to create a free job post at LinkedIn Jobs. And then once you do, add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread word that you're hiring. And then simple tools like screening questions will make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, let's continue our conversation discussing our takeaways from the Buffalo Bills slop fest against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's get into the wide receivers next. And I think we got a very big developing storyline at wide receiver, and that is Andy Isabella. Just so much positive momentum for him. And I thought it started that week that I was at camp. He started to really show up and make some plays. Made some plays in the preseason game last week. There's momentum. Sean McDermott's talking positively about him. You're seeing him get more opportunities to catch footballs from Josh Allen. The team gives him his own press conference this past week, and then you see the role. He's out there. He takes the opening kickoff, right? The first time the Bills get the ball in offense, he's the guy that's the kick returner. You saw him have the 19-yard catch and run. You saw him serve as on the punt team as a gunner. There was a rep early in the game where opposite of Justin Shorter at gunner was Andy Isabella. He did a great job of clearing that contact. And then once he clears, I mean, Andy Isabella is going to win foot races down the field, and I thought he did a good job of that, forced a fair catch on a boomer from Sam Martin, who I thought had a great game. So Andy Isabella just getting more opportunities to show this coaching staff what he can do. And I just feel like there's some great momentum for him to make this roster. Now, how you figure out which 6 receivers make the roster, that's tough. That's going to be tough. But I think Andy Isabella is doing everything he can to show this team what he can do. And there's just so much momentum for him and the possibility of him making this roster. How about Justin Shorter? Quiet last week. I talked about how he struggled to separate. This week, he's very involved, leads the team in receiving, 5 receptions, 47 yards, does have a touchdown in the game. And it was nice to see he had to kind of catch the football outside his frame a few times. You saw him getting good leverage at the catch point. You also saw him very active on the special teams units. And so after a quiet game from Justin Shorter, you see him show up in more ways. And I'm obviously very interested in checking the tape and really seeing how he was able to win routes and make those plays. And so we'll do an all 22 review for you early next week. And Justin Shorter is obviously going to be a big part of that discussion. Thought Gabe Davis had a couple of nice catches down the field. I hate that the one got called back, a beautiful down the field shot, great throw by Josh Allen, toe tap right along the sideline. And then I think that was the Spencer Brown holding penalty that negated that beautiful play. But the 2 catches that did count plus that one, I think you're seeing that, Gabe Davis and Josh Allen just have a lot of chemistry, and I'm pretty optimistic about what that duo can do in 2023. And so that's definitely a storyline that continues to satisfy me quite a bit this offseason, where I've spent some time really discussing some of the concerns that I had about Gabe Davis as the number 2 receiver. But I think he's obviously healthy. I think the presence of Dalton Kincad plus deeper or more depth at wide receiver is going to really be a benefit to Gabe Davis to flourish potentially in this number 2 receiver role. Trent Sherfield, I thought it really impressed me. Obviously, the 21-yard catch on the 3rd and long is what I'm referring to. And I think that play is such just like a perfect embodiment of what Trent Sherfield is as a player, just tough and competitive. He's a UDFA, has never spent a day on an NFL practice squad, just keeps making rosters year over year. And everywhere that he goes, you just hear them rave about just the work ethic and how he applies himself in every aspect of being a pro. And he shows up in moments like that, making a tough catch, elevating between like 3-4 defenders, hanging on through contact, moving the chains, doing the dirty work as a blocker, playing on special teams. Trent Sherfield has very quickly won me over, and I can just really gain a deep appreciation for what he brings to this team. And then speaking of depth receivers, I think Deontay Hardy also showcased himself well. He made a few plays out there. He had the outbreaking pattern for a 3rd down conversion, and then a screen play where he showed some pretty good run after catch ability. So the presumed players that you think are going to make this roster at receiver showed up this week in a lot of ways. And so that was nice to see. At running back, kind of an interesting day. James Cook didn't get much going, 3 rushes for 3 yards. The play that rubs me the wrong way is, I think it was 2nd and 4, maybe his second carry of the game. He just had to make Levi Wallace miss, and he had a really great opportunity to win in the hole and then actually win a foot race to the perimeter. And Wallace, to his credit, did a great job of making that tackle and staying in good pursuit and maintaining pursuit leverage. But I thought James Cook could out-athlete Levi Wallace, but it didn't happen on that play. So he was quiet, 3 carries for 3 yards. But the rest of the Bills running backs did pretty well. I mean, Latavius Murray, 6 for 26. Darrington Evans had some good runs, 6 carries, 45 yards. Jordan Mims, 4 carries for 24 yards. I mean, the team between Murray, Evans, and Jordan Mims, so all the carries that weren't by James Cook or Josh Allen, the Bills averaged 4.7 yards per carry rushing the football. And so I think the running backs did pretty well in this football game. As for the offensive line, let's talk about it. Lot to get into here. I guess let's start with O'Cyrus Torrence. O'Cyrus Torrence getting the start at right guard, significant. That's 2 weeks in a row. He's your starting right guard. And this week to do it with Josh Allen at quarterback says a lot. I mean, if the Bills weren't serious about starting this guy this year, I don't think he's playing with Josh Allen in preseason games. And obviously, O'Cyrus Torrence will once again be a big focus of my film study this week. But from the live watch, it felt like he held his own once again. And that's encouraging, right? I mean, this is a young player, a rookie, second preseason game. One of the things that I always think about with rookies is, does it look like they're drinking from a fire hose? And whether it's Dalton Kincad or O'Cyrus Torrence, these top 2 picks, neither one is giving me that vibe at all. And so I'm very encouraged with O'Cyrus Torrence, the likelihood that he starts at right guard and the opportunities that he continues to take advantage of. Now, at tackle, this is where we don't have as much of a fun conversation to have. Whether it was Deion Dawkins or Spencer Brown, they both had their share of struggles. Whether it was penalties, whether it was maintaining the width of the pocket, there was issues there. And for Deion Dawkins, I'm less concerned. I think Dawkins has kind of proven who he is in the NFL. There's a level of comfort that should exist with him being the left tackle. But Spencer Brown, in a very important year for him, was hopeful to see better from him in this game. And I know that it's preseason. You can use whatever excuse you want. But Spencer Brown doesn't get the benefit of the doubt, right? Like a Deion Dawkins would. And you know that I'm optimistic for Spencer Brown. I've talked a lot about his history and what's happened to this point, but it's got to come together this year. And it doesn't necessarily feel like coming out of this game that it will. And so I'll check the tape. I'll have more to share on Spencer Brown early next week. But from the live watch, you don't get the warm fuzzies. And I mean, I see you guys on social media. Some of you people are ready to just, send this guy to another planet. Like he doesn't deserve to be an NFL player. Let's see. Let's actually watch the tape. Let's get, let's let this play out a little bit. But obviously I can understand why there's nothing to be encouraged about right now at the right tackle position. Now, another issue with the Bills' offensive tackle situation is the depth. And Brandon Shell retired this week. That was a hit to the Bills' offensive tackle depth. And then after Spencer Brown and Deion Dawkins come out of the game, your first pair of tackles in is Ryan Van Demark at left tackle, Tommy Doyle at right tackle, and Tommy Doyle gets hurt. Leaves in an air cast on a cart. Doesn't look good, right? You kind of get the impression that this is a very significant injury, potentially a season-ending injury, after the guy had a season-ending injury last week in week 3. And so I said after the Brandon Shell retirement that 2 of Ryan Van Demark, David Quessenberry, and Tommy Doyle are going to make the team, and you just lost Tommy Doyle. And so are you looking at a situation right now where Ryan Van Demark and David Quessenberry are your backup tackles, and Quessenberry just continues to have problems, right? Like he's not looked good at all for the Buffalo Bills. Now, Ryan Van Demark continues to kind of be a bright spot for me in this offensive line depth conversation, but second-year player, UDFA, are you going to be one snap away from him? You might be. He might be your best backup tackle. And so is this a situation where Brandon Beane needs to get on the phone with Jason Peters and have an honest conversation about, hey, we need you to come in here. We need to get you up to speed. Might not have a starting job right away, but there's potentially a path for you to get on the field, or a contender. Come be part of this. I mean, I'm interested in that at this point. You just lost two of your potential backups at offensive tackle in the span of a few days. Now, overall, I did think that the interior players were quite solid in this football game, but I'll have more to say about them after studying the tape. But I think the big offensive line takeaways: Osiris Torrence, arrow up. Tackle struggled, and we come out of this game with even more concerns about the Bills' depth at offensive tackle. All right, folks, need a quick break. When I get back, we're talking defense. Stick with me. I'll be right back. All right, folks, welcome back. One thing that was really fun about this preseason game is that I spent a good amount of time in our subtext community. I sent out a bunch of my live takeaways as they were happening. And so if you want to get in on the Buffalo or the Locked On Bills subtext community, join it. There's a link in today's show notes. You can hop in there. You get one-on-one text conversations with me. I send out mass text messages, usually at least once a day, to kind of let you know what I'm thinking about with the team, updates on the podcast. We've done some giveaways. You get herd mentality priority, so much cool stuff. So check it out. There's a link in today's show notes to join the Locked On Bills subtext community. It's really, really fun. Love engaging with you. Love being a text message away and sharing more of myself with you and learning more about you guys as well. So check it out. Locked On Bills subtext community. We are having a blast. All right, let's talk about the defensive side of the football. The edge rushers. You had sacks for Greg Rousseau, Kingsley Jonathan, and Cameron Klein. Thought Leonard Floyd, Shaq Lawson, they were quiet. I thought Boogie Basham continued to have some good flashes, but collectively, the pass rush just really disappointed me in this game. I don't think the Bills did anywhere near a good enough job of having any level of consistency affecting the quarterback. And where I become discouraged, and again, the lens that I talked about at the very beginning of this conversation, it being, all right, this is a preseason game, but to have issues end of last season with pass rush and pass protection, and to come out of this game feeling like, wow, there's issues with pass rush and pass protection, that's not how you wanted to feel, right? You didn't want to feel that way, but that's where we're at. And and look, I think that it's pretty fair to say that the defense in general, Sean wasn't quite as aggressive with his alignments or pressure packages that he dialed up last week against the Colts. But the bottom line is guys just weren't winning reps, right? You got pass rush is about winning one-on-one. And that just did not happen enough in this football game. So a couple of flashy moments, but collectively pass rush just not good enough. As for the interior defensive line, I thought the run defense was really solid in this football game. Obviously, the 62-yard touchdown run by Jaylen Warren really stands out. But if you take that away, and I hate doing that. I hate saying, well, if you take this away, they did pretty good. Well, all the rushing stats, all the stats, they all matter. You can't do that. But outside of the 62-yard touchdown run by Jaylen Warren, the Steelers had 32 carries for 59 yards. The run defense was really good in this football game outside of one play. And I'll go back and watch the tape, but it looked from the live watch and the replays that we saw during the game on the 62-yard touchdown run that guys were just blocked. They had a hat on a hat. Nobody got off a block. I think a couple of the linebackers maybe took on their blocks with the wrong leverage, and Jaylen Warren broke one tackle and sprinted down the sideline for a touchdown. But otherwise, 32 carries for 59 yards is really solid. Let's get to something that wasn't solid, and that's the middle linebacker play. This is an issue. Folks, I've said for a long time the Bills don't have an NFL starting caliber player on the roster at middle linebacker, and I remain convinced that that's true. You saw Tyrel Dodson start this game, played early, and then you saw A.J. Klein get early reps with the first team, with Micah Hyde, with Jordan Poyer, with Matt Milano out there running the defense. And then you saw Tyrel Dodson come back on the field in the fourth quarter. So what's going on here? Is Tyrel Dodson the guy? Is A.J. Klein really going to have a shot at this? You know, we've heard Sean McDermott talk about that it's not just execution. You're running the defense. It's communication. You got to run the defense. And A.J. Klein's got a lot of time on task with Sean McDermott. And both players have physical limitations, right? You have to live with some of their deficiencies because I don't think they're NFL starting calibers players. So I think there's obviously deficiencies. But the guy that can come in and communicate and run the defense is probably A.J. Klein. Now, I hate that Terrel Bernard's just hurt right now. That's taking him kind of out of this conversation. But even when they were both healthy, Dodson and Bernard, you kind of felt like Dodson was ahead of him. And so I remain concerned here. If I'm Brandon Beane, I would have done something a lot sooner here. And I, at least right now, would be having conversations with guys like Anthony Barr and Rashaan Evans and Jermaine Carter, Jayon Brown. There's options out there that you should be at least considering. Now, as for the other players on or other linebackers, I thought they were a little more quiet. Last week, I felt like Dorian Williams, Traven Howard, Balin Spector kind of popped as reserves. I don't know that I feel that way this week. I know Dorian Williams actually led the team, I think, with 4 tackles. I'll be interested to see what the tape looks like, but I didn't come away with a ton of great feelings about how the linebacker depth performed like I did last week coming out of the live watch. At cornerback, the CB2 rotation continues. Dane Jackson gets the first reps. Then you saw Christian Benford. Then you saw Kaiir Elam. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure that Benford or Elam did anything to move the needle, to really change the coaching staff's mind on Dane Jackson being the guy. Now, I'm still very open to predicting that this team uses a platoon situation at CB2. They've done that 3 of the last 6 years, so there's precedent there. But, you know, even if it is matchup specific, I still think Dane Jackson is positioning himself to get the most work opposite of Tre'Davious White. And Benford and Elam just continue to not really do anything to move the needle, especially Elam, where he had penalties again this week. He had some issues where he was giving up leverage to areas that he doesn't have help. I don't know. It's a frustrating situation. And then as for safety, you know, Damar Hamlin had some nice run fills. So did Taylor Rapp. I thought the depth at safety looked good. In terms of those two guys, I mean, you know, Dean Marlowe, Zane Anderson, those guys are kind of bottom of the roster guys. But I was really encouraged by some of those downhill fills from Damar Hamlin and Taylor Rapp. And obviously cool for Damar Hamlin to be back in his hometown, Pittsburgh. Sean McDermott put him out there for the opening coin toss. And, you know, as he continues his remarkable comeback, it's super cool that he gets to play his first game in Buffalo and then his second game in Pittsburgh. So there you have it, folks. My top takeaways from this football game, sloppy football game. Sean McDermott is loaded with teachable moments that he can use to better his football team. Part of me can convince myself that I'm glad that they got this out of them now. And, you know, it can be a beneficial situation for the path forward. But obviously, if you want to be in your feelings on this game because it was super sloppy, you know, I would understand that. But I would also remind you that it is preseason, right? It's preseason. So let's try to have the proper context here. Let's not be hasty and have crazy overreactions. I know that there's always that urgency to do it, but it's preseason, folks. Preseason. All right. All right. I have enjoyed giving you my takeaways for this podcast. I do hope that you will take a moment to subscribe to the podcast. Would love it if you also were to take a second to rate, review, and share it. We got a bunch coming up for you next week. Herd Mentality, the All-22 review. Got another preseason game to get ready for. I'm sure there'll be some big storylines coming out of this game. So a busy week ahead on the Locked On Bills podcast. Don't miss it. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills. And I look forward to catching up with you again tomorrow.